So when working in Flash and developing your characters, it's important to start thinking about basic shapes, because when we're dealing with animation, it comes down to, and I'm just going to tweak my brush size back to a more moderate size here. We have basic shapes that we can work with. And I could draw it with the brush, or I can even use the primitives here and go, okay, it might be a square, it might be a circle, or the shape might be a rectangle, or I mean triangle. So we have basic shapes that can become the building block for the type of character that you're working on. It's important to think about your character in this way of what basic element or basic shape represents them, because it's really easy to get caught up in a lot of detail. So you'll draw a lot of subtle detail on your character, and you'll put in eyes and put in eyebrows, and then you'll have a mouth, then you'll have all kinds of teeth and a chin and a neck and a collar, because we like collars to simplify animation, and then you'll have a shirt and then arms. And by the time you start worrying about everything, got to have a watch on, or maybe it's a wristband because they watch too many 80s movies, so they figured, wristbands are cool, so then they put those on. It's the black pleather with the little snaps on it, so we can go get a different color and put some snaps on it. Yeah, he's cool. So you start worrying about all these subtle details, and what you lose sight of is the big picture. So you're missing out on the big picture of what is really going on. What does my character look like? How can I distill their essence down into a recognizable basic shape? Because different shapes are going to impart different emotion, different feeling, different character to the characters that you create. So I can get rid of that for now. So if you're going to decide that your character maybe has a pear shape configuration, so you get a basic pear shape, and then you put some type of head onto it, and maybe the head is a blockhead, or they're going to have kind of a pear-shaped head on a pear-shaped body. And one thing that's nice while you're working is you might want to just do some sketching, fast, loose, not really concern yourself with what is my actual outline, where is my detailed shape. This would be a way to start creating your basic kind of pencil form of what is my character going to be, how do I want them to look today, and start to figure out that character body form and shape. You can tweak it a little bit, but start playing with it and determining what kind of mass, what type of form is going to describe my character. Is it going to be short and kind of plump? Are they going to be long and thin? So it's a long and thin, beanstalk kind of person. It's going to be celery head here. So it's going to be, Attack of the Vegetables, because they're unhappy that I showed the vegetable abuse video in the audio class, which if you are curious, look up dark sector vegetable abuse, and then that's going to show you doing Foley effects with fruits and vegetables. It's a little bit disturbing, but it's very enlightening. So what shape? Tall and thin, short and round, boxy, and start getting a sense of what are you dealing with on your project, because that ultimately is going to start to give you a better sense of, okay, this is what I want my character to be, as you start to add personality and emotion to them as your project evolves and develops. When you have your characters, it's important as you start developing your assets to pay attention to what you're going to do for your backgrounds. Now, if you make your backgrounds precisely, exactly, and completely the size of the stage, you're going to find yourself very limited. So if I make this box and it's the size, well, approximately the size of the stage, but it's a little bit small, and if I draw something and realize I want it to be exactly a certain size, in the Properties panel on the right-hand side, I have access to objects X and Y origin points, and I can adjust an object's width, where 550 is the default width for your Flash file, and 400 would be my height. Again, going back to last week's discussion, if you're doing a 16 by 9 or even just a standard 3 to 4 letterbox, you will want to modify those proportions a little bit so that you get broadcast ready sizing into your project. So I have my box here now on stage waiting for me to do something, but it's not going to be very useful in this size. So if you modify it to give the 16 by 9 instead of the 3 to 4, the 960 by 540 appears to be a decent size. We have to modify our view down to fit in window, puts it at 96%. Now it fits. If you have a large monitor, you're blessed, and use it, and then you'll get to enjoy a better size screen. Now, with this, I can put all kinds of things onto this background. So if, whoops, sorry, my background was selected, so when I chose a new color, it changed its color. But the blue is going to work a little bit better now for what I need anyway. So now I have blue here. And now on this background, if I'm going to paint some more into it, so I will choose kind of a brown color and paint. Now my brush isn't very big, but if I make the brush bigger, I can make it fat, but if I zoom out, now I can fill that space up pretty quickly. The problem that I'm going to run into using background artwork that is indeed the size that we see on screen is that while I work on this, I can't, and sometimes I find it hard to keep talking while I'm drawing, but now that I have this house here, I can't do any type of camera movements with this piece of artwork. I can't move it, I can't adjust it, because now if I select it and move it, it reveals the underlying background. So when we think about it, if you come from a print background, you have what would be your bleed edge. You need the area that extends beyond the printed area of the page. If you're coming from a video background, you need what shows outside of your screen, outside your title safe area, so that if the camera moves a little bit, you don't reveal things that the audience isn't supposed to see. So if I want to animate this background moving or to simulate the illusion of creating a camera movement like a camera pan, I really need to make background artwork that is significantly larger than my actual finished stage size. So when you start building your assets, if you make something that is only the size of your document, your finished stage, you're not going to be able to do much with it except just leave it there. But if you make something significantly larger than the stage, you can shrink it down, you can zoom into it, you can move it left, you can move it right, and you can create all of these wonderful illusions of a film camera moving through a three-dimensional space. So my recommendation when you're making your sets, never make them just the size of the stage, but instead make them significantly larger than the stage so you have something to work with. So continuing along that line of thought, if I were to grab my brush, now if I want to quickly switch to the brown color that I have here so I can draw more with it, I can hit the I on the keyboard. That gives me the eyedropper. I click, it changes my color to brown, hit B to give me back my brush, and now I can continue with my brown. Now if I want to add more blue, repeat the process. I, click, hit B, because when I hit I and choose the color, it defaults then to the paint bucket tool, because it assumes I sampled a color and want to then do a paint bucket fill of an area. But instead I want to go back to painting. So now I can paint in some blue here, paint in some blue here. Oh heck, for that matter I'm going to extend it up even higher. Give myself more to work with. Now, if I go to the paint bucket tool, I can just quickly fill those areas in. And now I have something that I can move around in relation to my stage quite handily, so I will be able to work with this and animate this to create the illusion of camera movement. So if you're going to build your sets, your backgrounds, your scenes for your project, you want to make them bigger than the stage. Significantly bigger. I would recommend 1.5 times as tall at a minimum, and at least 3 times as wide, because that allows you to create camera movement so you get a sense of the camera moving across the stage. And we will be covering techniques on how to do that next week when we look at camera movements and camera effects in more detail. But it's worth mentioning this today so that as you start building your assets, you can plan accordingly. So while you're working and need to be able to determine where your stage area is, it's very easy when you get large background pieces of artwork to lose track of where is the stage. A variety of student projects have been turned in over the years where they did lose track of the stage and half of their project took place off screen. So they assure me that it was there, but until I saw the flaw file I had to only take them at their word because I was unable to see it. So to prevent such a tragedy occurring for you, the easiest way to take care of that is to add a new layer. And on this layer, I'm going to name this layer my stage guide. And when you add a new layer, you can just double click on the layer name and change its name. And now for the stage guide, typically you want to choose a color that is different than the color of things in your project. I usually use red or bright green as my stage guide frame colors, but it's up to you as to what color you want to choose dependent on your artwork or your personal taste. You may be offended by choosing the electric red color. It just might be too much for you, and you want something a little tamer. So now I can just click draw a box, and you may notice that I did not draw this box anywhere in relation to the stage because, well, I can't see the stage, I don't know where the stage boundaries are, and frankly I don't really care because I have a properties panel over here. So if I double click on that stage, I can set my X to 0, my Y to 0, my width to 960, and my height to 540, and it now has put that box right here where I need it. And at this point it would make sense to lock this layer so that I don't accidentally add artwork to it, so I don't move it, so I don't grab it, so now I can't touch it. And I can lock all the layers to so see now I can't affect anything. And if I now run my movie, we can see a little bit of that box showing up on the top and left side. So this box is on this layer, and for example purposes I'm even going to add some extra junk to it just to further illustrate some things. So if I scribble here, now test my movie, we'll see that that blue scribble is indeed on screen. But Flash allows you to create layers that are for guide purposes only. So they're there while you are working in Flash, but they disappear. It's common for project development teams to actually add guide layers and then put comments on those guide layers, so they provide comments to other members of the team about, hey, you need to fix this character here, this animation isn't quite right, we need to fix the colors here, The client is blah, blah, blah. No, you never say anything bad about a client because it will always get back to them at some point. So always talk nice about your client and nice about your boss. Those are just good life lessons. But if this layer, if I right-click on the layer or double-click on the layer icon in the layer palette, it pulls up the layer properties. The layer properties, I now have an option to set this layer to a guide layer. And once it's a guide layer, it shows up while I'm in Flash, but when I publish my Flash movie, it goes away. Guide layers rock because you can put all kinds of really useful things on guide layers, such as your stage frame. Now I'm going to just get rid of that blue since now we proved it works. We don't need that anymore. And now I can lock that layer. So we can put our stage frame on that layer. It's also useful when you're working on painting in artwork assets, whether it's characters or backgrounds, that you make a layer for your swatches. And you put swatches on this layer so that you can very quickly eyedropper them and use them to paint or fill from. But it's a guide layer, so you never have to worry about trying to then remember to delete it when you publish your movie. So guide layers are your friend, and we'll look at specific ways of including that a little bit later this evening.